Much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. I've spoken at length in this chamber before about the prospects of an island deal on the Isle of Wight, and I was delighted when on the 25th of September last year the Prime Minister spoke of the island deal that we're going to do. So I'd like to come to that, but first I want to come to the crux of the bill, and I very much welcome this bill. I feel a little bit guilty that I was barracking ministers earlier today over Huawei, so I want to go out of my way to congratulate those ministers who are putting together this bill, and indeed the entire health front bench, who I have a great deal of time for. And I'd like to thank in particular the Minister who's in his seat now, because I know that he and I have talked on various different occasions about the Isle of Wight. He is extremely knowledgeable, not only about his constituency, and I apologise for making sure that he is, but for many other constituencies as well. I know he does his job. I like the levelling up idea behind a lot of what government is going to do, because my patch, I know we've heard it from the right honourable gentleman, my honourable friend just now, but my patch has also lost out in many different ways in the past 10 or 15 years when it comes to funding. I spoke briefly with the Secretary of State last week, Mr Deputy Speaker, about some concerns in relation to the Isle of Wight's Trust. We have an increase in serious incident reporting, which was reported by the HSJ under Freedom of Information request last week, and I congratulate that journalist responsible for that work. I have to say, in part, the increase in reporting was because this was being encouraged by the new management, and I think, very supportive of the new management, which is trying to turn things around in the hospital. Our staff morale, sadly, it tends to be at the bottom of those staff morale charts, which are turned out by the NHS, and we have issues about recruitment, somewhat because we're an island, but that feeds morale issues, the uses of locums, and there's less time for patient treatment. We're now in requires improvement rather than special measures. So when I was talking with the Secretary of State last week, he specifically said, focus on the management. And I said, you're absolutely right, Secretary of State, to focus on management issues and how we need to support the management team on the Isle of Wight and all our senior doctors, our consultants, as well as all the NHS staff. But there is also an issue of funding, which I would like to remind my honourable friend of in the couple of minutes that I've got left. He knows that I've talked to him about this because I've spoken about it to the Secretary of State, who admitted in July that the Isle of Wight was unique in its health geography, and there are places in this country, including the Isle of Wight, where healthcare costs are higher. And I just want to remind him of that and say that I wrote to the Prime Minister, I think he's forwarded the letter to the Department of Health and others. We estimate, working with the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, we estimate that the additional costs of providing NHS services on the island to the same standard as the mainland is approximately £11 million. Now, there are many academic studies, both internationally, nationally, to do with Scotland and to do with England, that show that the costs of providing public services are more expensive, specifically on islands, because you have severance by sea. And that severance by sea, and academics give various sophisticated names to it, diseconomies of scale, island factors, etc. But basically it means that on the Isle of Wight, when it comes to our District General Hospital, we have a District General Hospital. I thank all the staff who work there. They do a great job in sometimes difficult circumstances. But we have only half the population of a District General Hospital. So we don't get the same tariffs. So everything costs more, and it is very difficult to get the same efficiencies and economies of scale. We estimate that the additional costs of providing the same standard of acute care on the island as to the mainland is an additional £8.9 million a year. And it would be great to meet with either the Minister in his place or the Secretary of State to discuss this. In addition, the additional cost of providing, Mr Deputy Speaker, an ambulance service, which includes Coast Guard helicopter ambulance, is about £1.5 million. Add to that the cost of patient travel by ferry, which can be uncomfortable, which can be difficult if you're going for repeated treatment on the mainland, for example to Southampton for cancer care, roughly works out at about £560,000 a year. So the Secretary of State is right. There has been a management issue which we are trying to confront. And that has fed lots of other problems with HR, with low morale, with difficulty of recruiting of consultants. But we are in a vicious financial cycle as well. So if we cancel an operation due to lack of beds, we don't then receive the tariff from that operation. And we have doctors and consultants and senior doctors who are not using their talents to the greater good. So I'll leave that point there because I know we want to wrap up. But I would like to just to remind the front bench and my right honourable friend specifically about the additional costs which we have now worked out and have presented to the government of providing NHS care to the same standard as the mainland. I'm not asking for golden elephants, I'm not asking for over and above all my excellent friends on this side and members on that side, but to provide the same level of standard we estimate to cost us an additional £11 million a year. Thank you.